The fire had stopped, but the silence was worse. Smoke curled into the cold sky, carrying the smell of burning metal and scorched earth. Dr. Elias Corvin crawled through the wreckage of the outpost, his hands scraped, his uniform torn, and his heart pounding. The explosion had taken everything: the shelter, the supply pods, even the communication arrays. For a moment he simply lay on the ground, staring at the gray sky, listening to the wind whistle through the broken structures. Nothing moved. Nothing breathed. Nothing survived. He forced himself to rise, gripping the jagged edge of a metal panel for support. Every step was a struggle. His mind was heavy with the faces of his lost team, the comrades who had trained alongside him and now lay scattered under debris. Yet something pushed him forward. A small sound, faint and desperate, reached his ears. It was almost drowned by the wind and the cracking of twisted metal. He froze, listening. It came again, a soft, high-pitched whine. It was not human. Elias followed the sound carefully, his eyes scanning the rubble. Smoke stung them, and the heat of small fires burned his skin, but he did not stop. The noise led him to a collapsed storage bay. The metal doors had been torn off, bent in impossible angles. Dust and ash filled the air, but underneath, a small, trembling shape moved. Elias's heart skipped. He crouched, brushing the debris gently aside, careful not to make a sound that might frighten whatever was trapped. When the last piece of debris shifted, he saw it. A dragon hatchling no bigger than a human toddler lay among the wreckage. Its scales were scorched black, some edges flaking with ash. Its wings were folded against its body, one slightly bent in a way that made Elias worry it might never fly. Its eyes were wide, filled with fear, pain, and confusion. The hatchling looked at him and let out a soft, pitiful cry. It was small, vulnerable, and yet powerful in presence. Elias swallowed hard. Everything in him told him to step back. He had seen what dragons could do, how entire squads had fallen to their kind in other sectors. Protocol demanded that he report it, or even destroy it to prevent danger. But the hatchling did not seem like a threat. It was trembling, burning, barely alive. His training as a combat vet took over, and his humanity, heavier than any military order, whispered that he could not leave it here. He moved closer slowly, speaking in soft, steady tones. "I'm here," he said. "I'm not going to hurt you." The hatchling flinched at his voice but did not try to run. Elias carefully lifted it from the rubble. The weight was surprisingly light. Its tiny claws scratched his sleeve, weak and desperate. He examined its burns, the small injuries, and realized there was no time to waste. Improvised or not, he had to act quickly if this creature was to survive. Using what remained of the outpost's medical supplies, Elias set to work. He tore his uniform into strips to bandage the worst wounds, using antiseptic from a fallen kit to clean burns and prevent infection. The hatchling whimpered with every touch but did not resist. Elias murmured soothing words, his voice trembling only slightly. Sweat poured down his face, mixing with soot and ash. Each breath he took tasted like fire and fear, but he kept moving. He cleaned, wrapped, and adjusted until the creature's breathing became less frantic, though still shallow. As he worked, Elias glanced around the ruined outpost. The destruction was complete. Broken walls, burned machinery, and empty corridors told the story of a mission gone wrong. Nothing remained of the teams that had been stationed here, nothing of the soldiers or supplies. The galaxy had taken much from him already. And yet, here was something alive, something he could save. He felt a spark of purpose he had not expected, a fragile hope in the middle of despair. Hours passed. The sun sank behind distant mountains of metal and rock, casting long shadows over the wreckage. Elias finally allowed himself to sit, the hatchling resting weakly against his chest. Its small head tilted, looking at him with eyes that reflected pain and fear, but also a hint of trust. Elias felt a connection he could not explain. It was as if the hatchling understood that he had risked everything to reach it, and it had chosen to stay alive because of him. Night fell and with it came the cold. Elias wrapped the hatchling in his jacket, trying to shield it from the chill. The stars blinked above, indifferent to the ruin below, but Elias did not feel alone. The fire had taken everything, yes, but it had not taken this chance to show mercy, to save something small, fragile, and fierce. He whispered again to the hatchling, "You're safe now. I'll make sure of it." For the first time since the explosion, he felt a strange calm. The outpost was gone. His team was gone. Yet in the ruins he had found life. Not human, not fully alien, but something in between, something that depended on him and in return gave him purpose. Elias tightened his hold, feeling the tiny heart beat weakly against his own. He did not know what dangers lay ahead, nor did he know how the galaxy would react to a human saving a dragon. But for this moment the fire had fallen silent, and mercy had survived. The hatchling, sensing safety, relaxed just enough for its wings to twitch. Elias smiled, a small, tired smile. The silence was no longer empty, it was full of possibility. He had lost everything else but not this. And sometimes that was enough to start again. Elias had not slept. The night was long, cold, and full of whispers from the wind through the broken walls. He held the hatchling close, feeling its tiny body tremble against him. Its scales were still hot from burns and its breathing was uneven, but it had survived. That small victory kept him moving, kept him alive, kept him focused. He had no supplies, no backup, and no idea if anyone else had survived. Only the hatchling mattered now. He gave it a small sip of water using a broken container, careful not to spill. The hatchling hesitated, its tongue flicking like a tiny flame, then licked the liquid. Elias smiled faintly. "Good," he said. "You're stronger than you look." It blinked at him as if it understood. He wondered what it had been through before the explosion. Was it born here or stolen from another world? Its eyes, dark and cautious, told a story he could not read. Elias knew he could not stay in the ruins. The outpost had been destroyed beyond repair. Any scavengers or patrols, human or alien, could appear at any moment. He had to find shelter. Using the remains of what once were storage pods, he built a small protected area for the hatchling. Metal sheets leaned against each other, forming a fragile wall to block the wind. He placed some cloth and debris inside so the dragon could lie down safely. The hatchling hissed softly, wary of the new enclosure, but did not resist being placed inside. As he worked, Elias thought about the dangers. Dragons were feared across the galaxy. Entire fleets had fallen to them, and some of the species were bred as weapons. Holding one in his hands could be seen as theft, even treason. If soldiers arrived, they would take it and it might never survive. Yet Elias could not let that happen. He would protect it no matter the cost. Its life was fragile, but it mattered more than any rule, more than any fear. By morning the hatchling's breathing had steadied. Elias fed it a small portion of dried protein bars he had scavenged from a destroyed locker. It ate slowly, licking his fingers with tiny rough tongues. He laughed quietly, a sound that felt strange after so much destruction. "You're stubborn," he said. "I like that." The hatchling's eyes brightened a little, and it made a small clicking sound almost like a purr. Elias had never heard anything like it before, and he wondered if dragons communicated in ways humans could barely understand. Suddenly a noise froze him. Metal scraping, a low hum of engines, something alive moving in the distance. He froze, listening. The hatchling hissed, its body stiffening. Elias instinctively placed his hand over it as if to shield it. He crawled to the edge of the ruins, peering through smoke and ash. In the distance shadows moved, dragon scouts. Their shapes were larger than the hatchlings, sleek and terrifying, and their glowing eyes scanned the ground. Elias's stomach tightened. They were coming for it and he was alone. He retreated quietly, carrying the hatchling closer to his makeshift shelter. It whined softly, sensing the danger. Elias whispered to it, trying to calm it. "Shh, stay close. Don't make a sound." The dragon's hum grew louder. He realized they were not just passing, they had detected the hatchling's life signs. They were searching. He knew they would not be gentle. A full-grown dragon would tear him apart without a second thought if he interfered. Yet he could not leave the hatchling. It was too weak, too small. He had to act. Elias looked around the ruins, searching for anything he could use. Broken metal, scraps of wiring, and the remains of the outpost's crates. He created a small diversion, throwing pieces of debris down a side corridor. The dragon's eyes followed, giving him a chance to hide. He crawled back to the hatchling, holding it close, his heart racing. He had never felt so aware of every sound, every movement. Every second counted. Hours passed as Elias stayed hidden. The hatchling began to stir, trembling but alive. He whispered to it again, telling it stories of human kindness, of times before war, of hope. The hatchling listened, tilting its head and clicking softly. Elias felt a strange connection forming. This creature, feared and hunted by so many, had no choice but to trust him. And somehow he trusted it too. When the dragons finally left, scanning the area but finding nothing, Elias breathed a sigh of relief. He knew they would return, stronger and more numerous. Holding a dragon hatchling in his hands was not just dangerous, it was almost impossible. Yet the thought of leaving it alone, to die or be captured, was unbearable. He made a silent promise. He would protect it, he would heal it, and he would face whatever came for it. By nightfall, Elias built a slightly larger shelter from rubble and metal, placing the hatchling inside. He created a small perimeter, using old sensors and panels to detect movement. He fed the hatchling again and it ate hungrily, its tiny wings twitching. Elias watched it, amazed at how fragile and yet how alive it was. The hatchling had survived the explosion, the fire, and the war. Now it survived because of him. He sat outside the shelter keeping watch. The stars glittered above, distant and cold. But beneath them something burned, hope, fragile but unyielding. He realized that the galaxy had judged him, that dragons had judged him, and perhaps he had judged himself. But in that moment, holding the hatchling, he understood that mercy was stronger than fear. The hatchling had no choice but to trust him, and he had chosen to save it. That choice he knew would change everything. As the night deepened, the hatchling curled against his chest, finally quiet, finally safe for a few hours. Elias rested his head against the metal wall, exhausted but alert. The enemy had been in his hands and he had chosen life over fear. The future was uncertain, the dangers far from over, but for now they had survived. And sometimes, survival was the first step toward something greater. The hatchling stirred slightly, blinking up at him. Elias smiled softly. "We're not alone," he said. "And we'll get through this, together." The night was quiet, but Elias did not sleep. The hatchling, small and fragile, lay curled against his chest. Its breathing was steady now, but every sound made it twitch. The wind whispered through the ruins and far away, faint hums of engines reminded him that they were not alone. He knew the dragons were searching. They would not stop until they found the hatchling, and the thought made his stomach tighten. He tried to think of a plan, but there was little to do. The outpost was destroyed and there were no weapons, no allies, no backup. Only him and this tiny creature. He looked down at the hatchling, brushing ash from its blackened scales. It tilted its head, eyes blinking slowly, and let out a soft clicking sound. Elias smiled faintly. "You're stronger than I thought," he said. "We'll make it through this somehow." The hatchling's eyes seemed to study him as if understanding the words he could not say. By morning the ruins were cold and gray. Elias had spent the night moving debris to form a stronger shelter, small walls that might hide the hatchling from prying eyes. He had also scavenged broken panels and wires to create a rudimentary alarm. He could not fight the dragons, but he could try to be ready. The hatchling nuzzled against him as he worked, its small wings twitching, trying to rise but too weak. He wondered what it had gone through before the explosion. Was it separated from a family, from its clutch? Whatever it had suffered, it was alive now, and he would keep it alive. Suddenly, a shadow passed over the ruins. Elias froze, his heart pounding. The sound of wings filled the air. Dragons. Not just one, but several, moving with careful precision. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, scanning the area. Elias crouched low, holding the hatchling to his chest. It hissed softly, trembling, but did not struggle. The dragons were cautious, intelligent. They were hunters and they would not strike without reason. Elias hoped his small shelter and the cover of the ruins would be enough. The dragons hovered near the wreckage, scanning with sharp eyes. Elias could feel their presence, feel their judgment. He had heard stories. Humans who tried to capture or harm dragons never survived. And yet, here he was, holding one in his hands. His body was tense, ready to react, but his mind was calm. He knew that fear would not save him, that violence would only bring more destruction. He had to rely on something else, mercy. He whispered to the hatchling, "Stay quiet. Don't move." The hatchling pressed against him, wings folded tightly. Elias slowly extended a hand, showing the dragons that he carried no weapons, that he meant no harm. One of the larger dragons tilted its head, watching him with an almost curious expression. Elias's breath caught. For a moment, it seemed as if the dragon understood. It was not attacking. It was observing. Hours passed. The dragons moved slowly around the ruins, but none came closer. They circled, tested the air, and then hovered at a distance, their glowing eyes never leaving Elias and the hatchling. Elias realized that they were not here to kill, at least not yet. They were watching, judging. Perhaps they had never seen a human protect a dragon rather than hunt it. Perhaps they did not expect mercy. Elias did not flinch. He held the hatchling tighter, letting it rest its head against his shoulder. As the sun rose higher, the dragons finally retreated, moving back into the distance. Elias exhaled slowly, relief flooding him. The hatchling stirred, blinking up at him with eyes full of trust. Elias felt something he had not felt in months, hope. The galaxy was dangerous, cruel, and unpredictable, but here, in the ruins of a destroyed outpost, life had survived because of a human's choice to care. He spent the rest of the day reinforcing the shelter and feeding the hatchling with what little supplies he had. It ate slowly, flicking its tongue and clicking softly. Elias watched it, amazed at how small acts of care could have such a profound effect. The hatchling, feared by many, had found safety and warmth in the hands of a human. Elias, who had lost everything, had found purpose again. That night, the stars shone bright, clear above the ruined outpost. Elias sat outside, keeping watch, the hatchling curled against him. He thought about the dragons that had observed him. He wondered if they would return. Perhaps they would bring others. Perhaps they would try to take the hatchling by force. But for now they had only watched. And that watching had changed something. It had shown that even in a galaxy full of violence, mercy was possible. The hatchling shifted, wings twitching weakly. Elias smiled, brushing ash from its tiny scales. "You survived," he whispered. "We survived." For the first time since the explosion he felt a connection, not just with the hatchling but with the galaxy itself. Perhaps humans and dragons could understand each other, if only they chose compassion over fear. As the night deepened, Elias wrapped the hatchling in his jacket, holding it close. He did not know what tomorrow would bring or if the dragons would return. He did not know if anyone else had survived the explosion. But he knew one thing. In a universe that often rewarded violence, he had chosen mercy, and it had not been in vain. The hatchling's soft breathing against his chest was proof that life could endure, even in the worst of circumstances. Stars glittered above, distant and cold, but beneath them a small warmth grew. The hatchling, weak but alive, had become a symbol of something greater. A chance for understanding, a chance for hope, and a chance for a human to show the galaxy what mercy truly meant. Elias held it tight, feeling its tiny heartbeat against his own. They were not alone, and perhaps that was enough to start changing everything. The morning sun burned weakly through the smoke of the ruined outpost. Elias had not slept, but the hatchling rested, curled against his chest. Its breathing was steady now, but every sound of distant engines made it twitch. He knew the dragons had returned. He could feel it in the air, a presence heavier, stronger, and closer than before. They were not just searching. They were coming to claim what belonged to them. Elias rose slowly, carrying the hatchling in his arms. He knew he could not fight them. Even a single adult dragon could crush him without effort. And yet he could not give up. He could not hand over this small life to be used as a weapon or destroyed. The hatchling had survived the fire, the explosion, and now the search. It deserved to live on its own terms, not as a tool of war. The first dragon appeared from the smoke, larger than anything Elias had seen before. Its scales shimmered darkly in the sunlight, eyes like molten gold studying him carefully. Elias held the hatchling higher, showing no fear. The hatchling hissed softly, wings fluttering. It was weak, small but alive. The dragon circled, testing the air, its massive wings creating gusts that rattled the debris around them. Elias felt the ground shake under each beat. Then a second dragon appeared, followed by a third. Their movements were careful, precise, almost intelligent. Elias realized they were not attacking, they were observing, judging. He understood then what the hatchling's presence meant to them. It was a part of their kind, and yet it had chosen him, a human, as protector. He took a deep breath and spoke calmly as if the dragons could understand him. "This hatchling is not a weapon," he said, voice steady despite his pounding heart. "It is alive. It is weak. It needs care, not fear. I will not hand it over to be used for war." The largest dragon tilted its head. Elias felt its gaze weigh on him, heavy and piercing. He knew it could end his life with a single strike. Yet it did not move. It simply watched. The hatchling clicked softly, stepping slightly forward, its small wings stretching. It did not flee to its kind, it stayed with Elias. That simple choice shocked him more than the dragon's size or power. Hours passed as the dragons circled, never attacking, never leaving. The ruined outpost became silent except for the wind and the soft breathing of the hatchling. Elias realized that this was a test. The dragons were not here to destroy, they were here to see if he would do the right thing. If he chose fear, if he chose self-preservation, the hatchling would be taken. If he chose mercy, perhaps something could change. Elias did not hesitate. He held the hatchling tighter, brushing ash from its small scales. "You will not be used to kill or to hurt," he whispered. "I promise. You are free and I will protect you." The hatchling clicked again, almost like it understood. Its wings trembled, but it did not resist being held. The largest dragon moved closer, lowering its head until its golden eyes were level with Elias. Elias did not flinch. He felt the heat of its breath, smelled the sharp, metallic scent of its scales. He could have been afraid, could have raised a weapon, could have run. But he stayed. He trusted that the mercy he had shown, the choice to protect life instead of fearing death, mattered more than his own safety. For a long moment, the dragon simply stared. Then, slowly, it withdrew, wings folding, and motioned for the others to follow. Elias felt relief wash over him. The dragons were leaving, but not because he had submitted. They left because he had chosen life over fear, mercy over force. They had seen that this small human could protect a hatchling where none had dared, and somehow that choice had changed their minds. Elias lowered the hatchling to the ground carefully. It stumbled slightly, weak but alive, then looked at the dragons. Instead of running to them, it stepped back to Elias. The dragons paused, watching the interaction. The hatchling did not need them, did not fear them, and had chosen its protector. Elias felt a swell of pride, relief, and hope all at once. The dragons circled one last time, then spread their wings and disappeared into the sky. Elias breathed heavily, watching until they were gone. The hatchling clicked softly, rubbing its head against his chest. "We did it," he whispered, voice shaking. "You're safe. You're really safe." It was the first time since the explosion that he felt the weight of hope instead of despair. He spent the rest of the day moving the hatchling to a more secure area, reinforcing the shelter and scavenging supplies from the ruins. It ate carefully, its small wings twitching as if testing strength. Elias watched every move, knowing that this moment, fragile as it was, mattered more than anything else. The galaxy had tried to take everything from him, and yet here, in the ruins, mercy had survived. By night, the stars shone clearly above, glittering in the cold sky. Elias sat outside the shelter, the hatchling curled against him. He looked at the stars and thought of the dragons, the explosions, the destruction. He realized something powerful. One choice, one act of mercy could ripple farther than any weapon, reach farther than any fleet. The galaxy was full of fear, but it was not full of mercy. He had given it, and in return it had changed everything. The hatchling stirred slightly, blinking up at him with eyes full of trust. Elias smiled, brushing ash from its tiny scales. "We survived," he whispered. "And maybe we can change more than this ruined outpost." He did not know how far the dragons would go with what they had witnessed, but he knew that the galaxy had seen something it had never expected. A human willing to protect, to care, to choose mercy over war. Night deepened, but Elias did not move. The hatchling slept lightly against him, small but alive. He thought about the coming days, the dangers that would surely return, the challenges he could not yet see. And yet, for the first time since the explosion, he felt a steady hope. Life had survived in the ashes, not by strength, not by fire, but by choice. And that choice, his choice, might be stronger than any weapon in the galaxy. He tightened his hold on the hatchling, feeling its heartbeat against his own. Stars above glittered, distant and cold, but below them a tiny warmth burned. The hatchling had survived, the dragons had seen mercy, and Elias knew that this small act could change everything. They were not alone. And for the first time in a long while, Elias believed that they might survive not just the ruins but the war itself. Months had passed since the explosion, and the ruins of the outpost had become a quiet place of healing. Elias and the hatchling, now stronger and more alert, had survived countless dangers. The galaxy still whispered of dragons and humans at war, but here, in this small corner of space, life had found a fragile peace. Elias had built a shelter large enough for them both, using metal scraps and panels, reinforced with whatever he could salvage. The hatchling, which he had named Ashen, had grown fast. Its wings were stronger, its scales shiny and resilient, and its eyes now held curiosity instead of fear. Every morning, Elias woke to Ashen's soft clicks and small nudges. He would stretch, feed it the rations he had scavenged or grown from small hydroponic patches, and watch it move cautiously through the shelter. Ashen had learned quickly, following Elias everywhere, testing its wings, exploring corners, and observing him with intelligence that seemed beyond its years. Elias often marveled at the bond they had formed. A creature once feared by the galaxy now trusted a human, and a human who had lost everything had found purpose in protecting life. Elias spent his days repairing parts of the old outpost and creating small devices to communicate with ships passing nearby. Occasionally travelers would come, some human, some alien, and Elias would offer help, food or shelter. He always kept Ashen close at first, wary of the reactions. Most visitors were startled, some fearful, but many were amazed. They had heard stories of dragons only as killers, weapons, or beasts, but here was one alive and gentle, resting its head against a human shoulder. Slowly, word spread, and the ruined outpost became known as a place where dragons and humans could coexist. One day, a patrol ship appeared on the horizon. Elias tensed, expecting trouble, but instead, a dragon commander landed, massive and regal, accompanied by two others. The dragon's scales glimmered in sunlight, and its eyes were steady as it approached. Elias held Ashen close, unsure of what to expect. The commander tilted its head, observing Ashen carefully. Elias realized immediately, this was Veilrix, one of the leaders who had once hunted the hatchling. It had come not to fight but to see. Veilrix lowered its head to Ashen, sniffing and studying the small dragon with care. Ashen, instead of fleeing, pressed against Elias's chest and let out a soft clicking sound. The commander's eyes flickered, a motion that Elias took as understanding. Then Veilrix extended a claw toward Elias, but not as a weapon. It gently nudged his shoulder, a gesture of acknowledgement and trust. Elias felt a surge of relief and pride. The dragons had recognized what he had always known. Mercy could survive where fire and war could not. Over the next days more dragons came, curious and cautious. They approached slowly, observing the hatchling, and Elias watched as Ashen interacted with them. It did not attack, did not flee, it chose to bond with Elias first. That simple choice broke old rules the dragons had lived by for centuries. Humans, they realized, were not all enemies. Elias had shown them that protection, kindness, and understanding could change the course of lives. Elias continued his work, repairing old communication devices, building better shelters, and even creating small medical stations. Ashen became his companion, his assistant, and, in many ways, his teacher. The hatchling taught him patience, trust, and the quiet strength of choosing mercy. Visitors to the outpost learned from them both. Humans began to see dragons as more than weapons, and dragons began to see humans as capable of something more than fear. The fragile peace grew stronger with each passing day. One evening, Elias watched Ashen climb a small ledge and spread its wings fully for the first time. The hatchling's body shimmered under the setting sun, scales catching light like fire. Then, with a sudden leap, it took to the air, flapping cautiously, circling the outpost and landing again beside Elias. The joy and wonder in its movements were infectious. Elias laughed, feeling a lightness he had not known since before the explosion. Ashen had survived fire, destruction, and war, but it had thrived because of care, patience, and trust. As night fell, Elias sat outside, Ashen resting against him, watching the stars glitter above. He thought about the explosion that had taken so much, team members, supplies, hope, but realized it had not taken everything. Life remained. Mercy remained. And through his choice he had changed more than he could see. The galaxy was still dangerous, still filled with fear and conflict. But here, in this small shelter among the ruins, humans and dragons had discovered something extraordinary. Elias whispered to Ashen, "You survived everything. And somehow so did I. We'll face the galaxy together." The hatchling clicked softly, nudging his shoulder. It was more than a sound, it was trust, recognition, and companionship. In that quiet night, Elias understood that fire could destroy structures, war could destroy armies, but neither could destroy the choice to care for life. That choice was stronger than explosions, stronger than fear, and stronger than hate. Months turned into years. Elias and Ashen remained together, and the outpost slowly became a hub where humans and dragons coexisted peacefully. Stories spread across sectors about a human who had saved a dragon hatchling, who had shown mercy to a species feared by the galaxy. The tales inspired others to act with compassion, to protect life instead of destroying it. Elias knew he could not stop every war, but he had started something bigger than himself, a ripple that might change the galaxy. And on quiet nights, when the wind whispered through the metal walls and the stars shone bright above, Elias would hold Ashen close and watch it sleep. The small dragon, once broken and afraid, had grown strong and free. And Elias, who had lost everything to fire and war, had found something that could never be taken away: trust, companionship, and the power of mercy. The galaxy had tried to take everything from him, but it had failed. The fire had destroyed buildings, war had destroyed lives, but it could not destroy what Elias had saved. And as Ashen stretched its wings in the night sky, flying high above the ruins, Elias knew that sometimes, what fire could not take was stronger than any weapon, stronger than any enemy, and stronger than fear itself. Together, human and dragon watched the stars, knowing that life endured and hope had survived. The world had changed and so had they, but one thing remained certain: mercy once chosen could never be undone.